everybody, this is Sarah, the Catholic Homemaker. Today's video is all about getting started eating real food. There are two ways you can go about this. You can either do it the gradual way or you can go completely all in. Now personally, I've kind of done a combination of both. I really wanted to go all in when I first started a real food diet, but I had to do somewhat of a gradual change for the main reason being budgeting for me. So I know that's kind of a reason for other people. I just wanted to discuss that in case people had concerns. And it's okay to do either one. It's okay to do a gradual change if that's what you need for your budget, and just make small changes over time. You're still making those beneficial changes for your body and for your family. Well, also some people might be overwhelmed with the idea of making so many large changes so quickly. So some people may want to make those changes for that reason, gradual changes at least. And then going all in, you may just be ready to make those changes yourself. You have the budget for it, or it may just simply be it's a necessary thing for you if you have some major health concerns. I had some major health concerns myself, so I kind of had to do a mixture of both and just eventually get better quality food over time. And the way I went all in is I made the dietary changes, but I couldn't afford to always buy organic food, things like that. So let's jump into my tips on how to get started for real food. The first tip is kind of a no-brainer, but it's remove all denatured and refined foods from your diet. And I'm not saying processed food here because Sally Fallon Morell has come out and said processing your food is actually okay. And what she means by that is that it is necessary to process our food. An example of that would be making grains into flour or soaking our beans to reduce the anti-nutrients in them. That is a processing of the food or cooking the beans. We can't eat them in their raw form. So if you want to be really technical, that's why she uses the terms unrefined and denatured foods, because those are the kinds of foods that we want to avoid. Things with lots of white flour and white sugar and dyes in them and all kinds of preservatives in our food that just are completely unnatural, that should not be part of our diet. And we want to make our food from scratch as much as possible. And it does not have to be something complicated. I'm finding that as I've been a mother longer, and now that I'm a mother to two little girls, I'm wanting things to be simple. I can't be cooking these complex meals all the time. So just because you're eating a real foods diet and you're cooking from scratch does not mean that you have to make something completely complicated. Sometimes it's something as simple as just baking chicken in the oven, roasting a vegetable or sauteing a vegetable, even a frozen vegetable. You can buy organic frozen vegetables in the store, and that's perfectly fine. And you can pop sweet potatoes or white potatoes into the oven, and that's dinner. And the way to make it taste good and make it more nutrient dense is to use a good salt, of course. Use like Himalayan or sea salt on your food and season it with other herbs and spices to your liking. Adding good fats to it, like adding lots of butter or sour cream to your potatoes and vegetables, and even to your meat too. There's all different kinds of things you can do, and that's just a very simple way to make those changes and still eat really good food and feel much better too. The second tip that I have is buying pasture-raised animal foods, and preferably from a local farmer if you can. I know it may depend on where you live, what kind of access you have, But it's good to replace your animal products with pasture-raised dairy, pasture-raised meats, and pasture-raised eggs. And then if you're using honey, to buy a raw local honey. All those things are much healthier for you than the conventional type of animal meat. And one other note I wanted to say about the first tip is that you can simply replace your ingredients and recipes that you are used to with healthier ones. And an example of that would be margarine. Margarine should not be part of our diet, or vegetable oils, and you can just simply replace that with butter or another traditional animal fat like tallow or lard. You can also use coconut oil or palm oil. All these are really healthy, stable fats. The third tip I have is to buy organic and local produce and other plant foods if it is possible. And again, it may depend on where you live. Some people have better access than others, but just do the best that you can with your budget. If you can afford a little bit of organic food, try to buy what you can afford. And organic food is becoming more and more prevalent, which is awesome. You can even find organic food at Aldi. Walmart even has a large selection. I think it probably depends on the area that you live in, of course, because I've seen variations depending on which city or state that I am in. But organic food is everywhere now, and just try to buy it based on what your budget is. And then you can also look at EWG's, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 list. There's a list of 15 fruits and vegetables that are the lowest sprayed in pesticides, insecticides, and fungicides. Avocado is the number one on that list. That's the absolute cleanest one. So that's really not even necessary to buy organic unless you just simply want to support the organic industry. And that's great if you can do that, if you can afford that. But there's a number of other fruits and vegetables on that list that are very low sprayed, and they're pretty safe to eat when they're not organic. But then there's a list of the Dirty Dozen list. So if that's all you can afford on your budget is just following those two lists, just completely avoid like the Dirty Dozen if you can, and just stick to the Clean 15 fruits and vegetables. The next tip I had is avoiding or reducing sweets and replacing with healthier alternatives. So the first thing you can do is ask yourself, well, why am I having a sweet craving? Maybe it's simply because you need more fat in your diet. It could be a number of reasons. But if you want to enjoy sweets every once in a while, you can replace the regular sugar that you're used to that's not organic, that's probably genetically modified, with healthier alternatives like raw local honey or maple syrup. Those are the healthiest type of sweeteners, and try to go for the darker maple syrup. It's usually more expensive, but it has the whole spectrum of vitamins in it versus the lighter maple syrup. But raw local honey is very great too. So if you want to enjoy your sweets every once in a while, try making a recipe like an old family recipe, just replacing those ingredients with healthier ingredients, like replacing the salt, that table salt in there, with a Himalayan salt, replacing margarine or vegetable oils for butter or other traditional animal fats. And you kind of get the idea with that. You can also, if it calls for a flour, sometimes you can replace it with a sprouted flour, or there's other flours, alternative flours out there, like cassava flour is one that's pretty healthy to use, and you could replace it with that, although cassava flour can be pretty expensive. So if you can tolerate grains or wheat in your diet, sprouted wheat or a sprouted grain is a better alternative if you're making cookies or something. You could also experiment with sourdough. I have some sourdough videos on my channel that I can link to. And then the last tip I have are soaking your grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. And planning is key on this. Some of them it is easy to remember or adjust to, but other things it's a harder transition. So I'm going to give you an example of oats because a lot of people like to eat oatmeal for breakfast. So I like to soak my oats longer than some people. Some people just simply soak their oats overnight, but I have read that oats actually are the hardest grain to break down phytic acid of all the grains. So I think it's important to soak your grains, especially oats, longer. And so what I would do if I were eating oatmeal for breakfast every morning and I wanted to make this change, if I were making oatmeal one morning, I would simply try to plan my breakfast for the next morning. So it would have a 24-hour soak. And so let's say you have half a cup of oats that you're going to make into oatmeal. You would take that half a cup, soak it in filtered water. Go ahead and do that when you're making your breakfast. And this is for the next day, just to remind you. And then just add a little bit of apple cider vinegar, lemon, or yogurt into it. I don't know the exact ratio. I never measure it, but I just try to add enough water to cover the oats and maybe a little higher in case it soaks all of the water. And then just add some apple cider vinegar into it and just leave it until the next morning, until I'm ready to cook with it. And then you can just simply drain it and then cook it to your liking after that. And that's just a really simple adjustment. And beans are very easy. A lot of people have heard about soaking their beans. So it's just about planning in advance, really. It's like, oh, if I want to make beans on Friday, well, meal planning can kind of help with this. But like, some people like to soak their beans for days. Like my mom, she actually soaks her beans for about 4 days. So if you wanted to cook your beans on Friday, you'd probably want to start soaking your beans at least on Monday. And her beans taste really good, and they actually stay good for longer than like beans that you hadn't soaked would stay good for. And I think that's because of she's soaking them in vinegar for so long. And nuts and seeds are the only ones you wouldn't want to soak longer, just because they would kind of get too mushy after time. There's things that you can research about that. I actually have a nuts and seeds video that I made a long time ago. I can link to that as well. Anyway, I hope you have found this video to be helpful, especially if you are new to having real food. And if you have any questions, please let me know below. And please also let me know what your experiences are if you're already experienced in eating real food. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell for all notifications so you'll know when I post. Until next time, bye!